Named one of the Wall Street Journal's 10 best places to go in 2025, Traverse City is northern Michigan magic. Think sparkling blue waters, golden dunes, and of course, incredible food. This summer marks the debut of the Traverse City Food and Wine Festival, running August 20th through 24th. The event highlights both national and local chefs including Tyler Florence, Ji-Hae Kim, Mei Lin, and Kate Williams, and features ticketed dinners, a grand tasting tent, and wine tasting. Visit traversityfoodandwine.com for details. I love Maine lobster for its versatility in the kitchen and its iconic flavor. The sweetest lobster on earth, prepared in pasta, served chilled in a salad, and of course in a lobster roll. Maine's lobster fishery is among the most sustainable in the world, with every lobster harvested by hand, one trap at a time, from independently owned and operated day boats. Maine lobster can be purchased year-round, fresh or frozen, raw or pre-cooked, shell on or shell off, and with ready-to-eat and ready-to-use options. Visit lobsterfrommaine.com for details.
You know, in the way that O'Doul's seemed to signify an or. You were either drinking or you were drinking O'Doul's. What our beer and our brand is about is and. When you give someone a fun brand to participate with, and you give them a beer that makes them go, what the hell is that? That's different. The choice is easy.
This is Taste. I'm your host, Matt Rodbard. We've been covering the non-alcoholic beer scene on Taste for a minute, and it was a lot of fun having one of the exciting names in the industry, Tate Huffard, into the studio. Tate is the founder of Best Day, which is one of my favorite NA beers available today. Tate shares the story of the company and how he's bringing NA versions of Kolsch and IPAs to the masses. We also zoom out and talk about the future of NA drinking and how craft beer drinkers are embracing cans and bottles and even kegs of the stuff. Also on the show, we have a great conversation with Rob Jensen. He's the co-founder of the Chicago-based Visitor, and we learn about the company's unique approach with NA beer. Think less is more. So much more. If you were ever interested in how NA beer is made and why you are starting to see it more and more on menus and in bars, this is the episode for you. I hope you enjoy it. Tate Huffard, welcome to This Is Taste. It's great to meet you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. You know, it's 10 a.m. and we're cracking open an NA Best Day, and that's a pretty good way to start a day.
I'm taking a sip right now.
And me too. I'll join you.
We're drinking your Kolsch, which, let me shower some praise. I love what you do. I love Best Day. I'm thrilled to finally welcome an NA brewer to the show. And anyone who's listened to our show knows our deep love for the category. We love NA in all of its forms. We love RTD, ready-to-drink styles, so bottled phony Negronis to many NA beers. And what better way to feature NA brewing than having one of my faves on the show? And really, you've dedicated your career now to NA brewing. But take us back. What inspired you? Like, what was the timeline a little bit when you decided to start NA brewing, and really what drew you to this category? Yeah,
well, there's a hefty dose of chance mixed into that whole thing. I do think that the way that I stumbled into NA beer was definitely unique and has really informed how we look at the category, which is a little different than other people. So, I'm from the Northeast originally and moved out to San Francisco in 2010, kind of on a whim, and immediately went hook, line, and sinker for the lifestyle. Got the surfboard, the skis, the mountain bike, got into trail running, loved the live music scene, loved the food scene. And for me, the intersection of beer with all those things was pretty powerful, right? And what I began to really notice and appreciate was the way that beer brings people together. I mean, I'm not a beer snob by any means, but what I've always loved about beer is the role that it plays in our culture, right? It brings people together, and whether that's parking lot beers or après-ski beers or what you're drinking at a show or what you're pairing with some food. Beer really elevates that experience. And I just loved it and still do.
Yeah.
And
you drink yourself on full speed beers?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And we'll kind of get to that. That's definitely part of the story, and it definitely informs, again, like our unique perspective. But like I said, like I really love the way that it brings people together. And in my 20s, the math was easy. It was just more, right? And you wake up and you just do it again, and it's no problem. And when I rounded the corner into my 30s, that math just started to change a little bit. The calculus got a little different.
The mornings became a little different scenario.
Yeah. And, the analogy I always give is I'd go out for beers with my surfing buddies. It would be like, all right, 6 a.m. paddle out at Ocean Beach before work. No one would show up anymore. Mm-hmm. And it just had all of us kind of stop and take a beat and just say, well, this is why we live out here. And we're doing less and less of it, not more and more. And so we started challenging each other with not drinking during the week. And, this is back in 2015, 2016. And, we were drinking kombucha, we were drinking, the Spindrift and flavored, waters like that.
Yeah, look, you had a
right?
LaCroix phase, I'm sure.
Yeah, of course.
Everyone did around 2016.
And they're great products, right? But they're not at all like drinking a beer. They really just don't fill that cultural role that beer plays so well and has for so long. And so I was really feeling that void, and you're feeling like you're missing something in life. And the part of the story where chance really comes in is right here. And my father-in-law, who I was just getting to know at the time, he's from Minnesota. And whenever he would come out and visit my wife and I in Sausalito, he being the typical O'Doul's drinker who kind of left the drinking market reluctantly, went there because there was no other option, he'd bring over a 6-pack of O'Doul's, and he'd kind of, choke down one and park the other 5 in my fridge.
Right.
And the light bulb moment for me was opening up the fridge, right, and seeing the beer that I love drinking, which has 4%, 6%, 9%. So it occurred to me, I'm already making this choice as a consumer, right? There's usage occasions for each of those things. But the two things I'm not willing to sacrifice are brand or quality on any of those beers, no matter where I am on the spectrum. Except when you look at the 5 O'Doul's that are starting to collect dust in my fridge, I'm sacrificing both. How bad is that? I mean, the beer is awful.
Yeah, let's go into it. What is O'Doul's to you? Because I agree, a terrible product.
Yeah.
And of course, a stigma too.
That's
and
it.
We'll get into your branding, which I love. I love the identity of Best Day. It has a warmth to it, and it has a cool factor. But O'Doul's was the opposite. It was a real stigma.
It was the opposite. I mean, just think of that, right? It's like a product that you wouldn't choose to drink, and a brand that signals something negative. Yeah. I mean, no wonder people weren't going there, right? Yeah. And so for me, as the light bulb went off, right, it was like, well, if we could make a great tasting craft non-alcoholic beer, right, that would get me drinking, right? And the brand portion of that was immediately clear, that it wasn't about deficit, right? Mm-hmm. It wasn't about not being able to do things. It wasn't about having a bad product. It was about abundance.
Yeah.
Right? It was about, wow, if we could have this craft NA beer that tasted great, that happened to have no alcohol in it, well, for me, that might be my Monday to Friday beer, right? It starts to, and then the gears started turning, and I just couldn't let it go, right? But the two things that were really clear, right? Because I think I do come at it from being a beer drinker and someone who, enjoys a cocktail and enjoys wine, that in order for it to really be a part of my life and to fill the void that I was looking for, it had to be a truly great product.
Take us there, Tate. I think that's a great lead into my question about when you think about the NA beer in 2024, it's not O'Doul's, obviously. It's about having the different styles of beer represented accurately.
Yeah.
We're going to get into the athletic conversation because I think we have a lot to say about that, or I do at least. But really, when you're thinking about your first test runs, what are you trying to do with the flavor of these beers, and how are you deciding on what styles? Because Kolsch is a beer that has such a definitive style. If you've been to Europe or even, beer bars around America, this style is iconic, and you nailed it. It had to be a real challenge there.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you saying that. Essentially, the strategy that we've taken from day one is do everything completely differently.
Yes.
The opposite of how it had been done. So from the branding perspective, our standards for this brand are a brand so beautiful, right? And that stands out so much that you want to take our artwork and put it on your wall in a frame. I mean, that is so different than the O'Douls, the St. Pauli Girl, the Klosthalers of the past, right? And from a product perspective, the methodology for making beer, NA beer of the past, was really emblematic of what that beer was. It was an afterthought, right? It was like, how can we just cook off the alcohol? And who cares about the product? And so to take a tack that was intentionally 180 degrees from that was imperative from the beginning. And that came down to the quality of ingredients. Sure, it's going to cost a lot more, right? Yeah. But in order to win over this new consumer, in order for this to be the next chapter of drinking, it had to be different. And then it comes down to the type of beers that we're making. I mean, these had to be beers that were going to win over and wow someone who's been drinking a hazy IPA or a West Coast IPA, right? And we're going to do things really differently with these beers.
Yeah. It's a great point because with Kolsch or with like a very hoppy beer, we know those flavor profiles as beer drinkers for the past 15 years, having lived through the craft beer boom. But you're talking about de-alkalizing in a sense. Without getting too much into the weeds, how do you crack that code? Like, how do you make these beers taste like the profile that we know?
Yeah. Well, again, I mean, this is something that sets us apart, and it took a long time to develop this process and technique for making our beers. For us, differently than some of our competitors and some of the other people in this space, it was so important for us to brew a full strength beer. Yeah. All those flavors that you know and appreciate, all the aromas, the mouthfeel. Yeah. You gotta start with a full strength beer. And then what we do essentially is, we extract the alcohol. And there's some magic that happens on the beginning and the end, but the key for us was that it had to start as a real beer, or else it wasn't going to end anywhere close. You could end somewhere that was like drinking a beer, but it wasn't drinking a beer.
Did you look to Germany at all? Because, Germany has had a very long tradition with NA beers. It is a culture that prizes beer consumption to the highest level. And really, Germany is where we look at for de-alkalized wines as well. It's like part of the culture. Like, so when you're thinking about this, de-alkalization, where are you looking for your sources of information?
Yeah, well, I mean, looking to Germany and a lot of the European countries, not just for the product, but for the conviction that this was going to be a thing. I mean, even in the early days of this craft NA boom, the difference in NA beer as a percent of total beer that's consumed between the U.S. market and the European markets, where they were, high single digits, low double digits. Yeah. And here, our category's been bumping along for decades at 0.3%.
Wow. Incredible.
And those are the O'Doul's years. That's that consumer, that safety net that kind of always existed there. But in order to get the conviction, like I said, to get this thing off the ground, I was looking at Europe, and you could point to that and be like, they're not fundamentally different humans over there, right? So what's going on over there that's not going on over here? And to your point, a lot of that has to do with product. So we have looked there for direction, and we have looked there for technology. And, drinking a Kolsch, we have looked there for variety, too.
Kolsch is your icon, and really, clearly, you were looking at Europe with that. I think that the talk of the market leads to a big picture conversation, and really, in 2023, the global non-alcoholic beer market stood at around $20 billion. It's projected to grow by 2033, so under 10 years, to $40 billion, to double in the market share. That's incredible growth. Now, Tate, let me ask you, why? Like, why are we drinking more NA beers now? And with these projections, we're going to be getting into like that double-digit percentage of market share now.
Yeah. It starts with being totally different. And again, it's, there is NA beer of the past, and then there is NA beer of the future. And I think what is driving those numbers is, what I refer to as a absolutely tectonic shift in consumer behavior. Yes. And that is consumers' relationship to alcohol. Now, that does not mean sobriety. It can. Right. And the beauty of what we're doing is we empower people to make whatever choice that they want to make. And I think because the choice doesn't, in the way that O'Doul's seem to signify an or. You were either here, you were either drinking, or you were drinking O'Doul's. What our beer and our brand is about is and.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you give someone a fun brand to participate with, and you give them a beer that makes them go, what the hell is that? That's different. The choice is easy. And then you empower the consumer to make that choice. And so the walls just come down. And I think that's why that's why people have come into this, in droves. There's so many independent forces that are contributing to that tailwind, right? It could be wearables, right? People wear rings, they wear watches, that gives them a sleep score. It doesn't take a genius to read a number 0 out of 10 or 0 out of 100. And you're like, man, if I drink, it's a 2. If I don't drink, I'm a 98 consistently. That's influencing people's behavior very, very readily, right? And there are plenty other examples like that. Your Monday to Friday beer, your Saturday afternoon beer, your beer for Little League. It's like there's so many different aha moments that people are having. And again, once they taste that beer, they're like, oh, this was an easy decision. And I think that's why you're seeing this compounding growth.
Yeah.
It's not slowing down. It's just picking up.
Oh, of course. And I think we'll get into the way that retail and, of course, bars are changing the relationship with NA as a category, and really the lists are changing rapidly in cities across America. I want to talk about the tailwind you speak about, and I think a big part of that tailwind is the company Athletic.
Yeah.
We can't deny that Athletic really changed a lot of people's behavior. I would say in 2024, when you go out, there's two different ways to look at it. First, there's the Athletic are the only option, and sometimes the bar owner or the bartender will say, well, we've got this thing kind of Athletic, blah, blah, blah. Then you got the other side of it, which is like, we don't carry Athletic because it's too basic. It's like now this, like, it's basically the beer for the people who don't know NA beer, which I think is like probably a good thing for Athletic to have that kind of market share and to have people actually be adverse to it who are like beer snobs. Anyways, Tate, how do you view Athletic in relationship to your company? Of course, they're a competitor, and I know you want to grow to the size of Athletic, but you have to have some thoughts on what this company has meant for the category.
Oh, yeah. First and foremost, we hold them in such high regard. I mean, what they have done to be a first mover in this category is pretty remarkable by any standards. they have taken people who disbelieve and the naysayers, and they have completely forged a path for this category. And it has been really remarkable to watch them do what they do. They've got about a 6 or 7 year head start on us, and so first and foremost, full stop. We really really respect what that team has done, and they've broken down, and they continue to break down barriers and push into places like C-stores that no one ever dreamed NA beer would be, and at the same time, I think there is absolutely space for more brands. And, Athletic really has appealed to, as the name would imply, a certain type of consumer. Mm-hmm. Not every drinker of NA beer is an athlete.
Yeah.
And like any category, like there deserves to be choice for consumers. There deserves to be choice in brand. There deserves to be choice in product. We make our beers in a fundamentally different way than Athletic.
Interesting. What do you mean?
Well, I can't lead too much in the magic, but
I know.
Suffice it to say that the best way to make NA beer in 2016 or 2017, when they got off the ground, is not, in our opinion, the best way to make NA beer now. And again, it comes back to that, we believe that as people who really love beer, you gotta start with a full strength beer, in our opinion.
Great. I love that comment, and I think you've been very diplomatic. Clearly, you're doing things differently at Best Day, and I wonder if Athletic will fade away, and the more premium brands will take over. What do you think?
I mean, for any consumer, competition is good, right?
Yeah.
And there are very few categories where the people that started that category are the leaders in 5, 10, 50 years. Who knows where this thing is going to go? I believe it's only going to get bigger and bigger, but let the consumer decide.
Yeah.
Right. And again, it's like, I think that there is a great brand and product fit, right, for certain people in this category. It's not for everyone, right? And I think that's one of the reasons why we've been able to move so quickly, is because retailers understand that, like, man, not every one of my consumers is an athlete. Like, there should be a brand here that represents something else that these consumers want.
Yeah.
And also, you go to a music venue, right? Musicians, don't necessarily want to put in, or arenas don't want to put in a brand that's tied to being an athlete, right? They want something else, and we're just there, filling that void.
Love the way you phrase it. It's I think it's good to have healthy competition in this space. Let me ask you about like the trend of NA beer, and like craft beer hit a peak around 2018, and I feel like there was a situation where craft beer expanded really fast, and you would go to any city and there was like 3 or 4 local brewers, and really it was too much expansion. It was too fast, and many have gone away through consolidation and just generally the market being oversaturated. How does this category not suffer the same fate?
Well, I think first and foremost, we have the benefit of, what happened in craft beer over 35 years of fluctuation and expansion and overexpansion and proliferation. And I think that the retailers and the distributors are wary of that happening again, right? They've got a much tighter funnel at the top that I think will inhibit that kind of over proliferation. So I think that there are structural elements in place right now that are going to impede that from happening. at the same time, I also think that it's really hard to make a non-alcoholic beer.
Interesting.
Right?
It's very difficult to nail the flavor profile and lose the alcohol. It's easier to make a beer.
Yeah. So in the same, like, Eddie, you could get a young crew together and start your local alcoholic craft brewery, right? And there was a playbook for that. Yeah. And as a result, you see whatever it is, 9,000 breweries across the country, and it's, again, very hard to make a non-alcoholic beer. So I think that, both on the retailer and distributor side and on the actual production side, I think that there are things in place that I don't think that this is going away.
Yeah.
But you're right to point that out, because you can walk the shelf of a Total Wine and it looks completely different than it did 5-10 years ago. So I'm not saying that there's no rush to get into this market. There is. And I think pretty quickly we're going to see some entrants exit stage right, right? Because the customer is the one that's going to vote on who sticks around. And, you got to have a great tasting beer in order to get people sticking around in this category.
How much do you think about the macro brewers, upping their game? I think about like Heineken Zero, significant proliferation in the market, a very good product. Guinness, of course, has done an incredible job with the NA. And then, Asahi, if you can find it, their 0.0 is pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
So how much do you think about the big boys and macros kind of getting into it and doing it in a big way?
Well, one way I think about it is put yourself in a grocery store looking at a beer aisle, right? Again, 5-10 years ago, NA beer was a dark corner where the beers were collecting dust. And think about it now.
Mm-hmm.
And I credit those macro players a lot with validating the category.
Yeah.
Heineken Zero is spending gobs of money that we will never have, encouraging people to go to that part of the beer aisle. And we feel really good about being able to compete once they're there.
Yeah.
So I think there is absolutely a rising tide.
Yeah.
And the macro players, with the marketing dollars they have, are accelerating that rising tide. There's no question. And as long as it's good product, right? That's the key, because so many of these experiences that consumers are happening for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I see it as a really good thing. It's leading to a healthy expansion of that beer set, of the NA beer set. And I'm pretty confident that, once consumers get there, they want to participate with the brand. They want to participate with a pure play brand that really stands for what they're looking for. And that's out there connecting with them on the streets, doing events, marketing, doing podcasts, talking about the NA beers, right? In a way that, the macro players just don't do that, because they're focused on the 99.9% of their business, which is selling alcohol.
Yeah. But still, I agree with you. I think there is a great gateway in getting that first Heineken Zero and really changing behavior.
Yeah,
as you
totally.
said, at the jump, like, maybe having that Heineken Zero at the daytime drinking session with your friends and realizing, wow, actually I can drink NA and it tastes like Heineken. Crap, I've had the same experience. So maybe I'll up my game and get some Best Day or Athletic down the road.
Why not try a West Coast IPA? Why not try a Kolsch? And that's the exploration. I think that's the road that the customers go down once they kind of get the gateway drug of a Heineken Zero or a Guinness Zero.
Very cool. I want to ask you, let's go back a bit and tell me about in 2016, 17, when you're launching, how do you get the word out on a very, on a shoestring budget? I love, and I think there's a great story here, and I think the journalists of our time will tell this story about this real like moment of NA's birth, and Athletic will be part of it. You'll be part of it. But really back then, you must have had to have been crafty, pun intended, with the way you got influencers, got key channels to buy in. And I think I experienced your beer for the first time on the West Coast at a great all-day cafe. But how was it like getting the word out for Best Day? What was it like bootstrapping this company?
Yeah, well, I am, I think, very fortunate that the place where I happened to get this thing off the ground is just a bastion for the lifestyle of kind of that intersection of beer and, fill in the blank, music, food, surfing, running. So all this stuff was in my backyard. And I had a hunch that if I could just, get some cans in the right hands, things would start moving. And I remember getting my first production run, right, which was a whopping 50 cases.
Wow.
And, that's half a pallet. And I remember staring at that pallet being like, how in God's name am I ever going to get people to drink this much NA beer? And sure enough, I put it in the back of my truck. I drove around Marin and San Francisco, and my goal was to kind of own this 5-mile radius around Sausalito. And I knew the accounts that I if I could just get it in there, that was the right consumer. And they were, a mix of on-premise and off-premise accounts, but kind of the tastemaker accounts, if you will. And they were, beer gardens and great dinner spots and pizza spots and then the independents, the grocery stores that people go into who are looking for stuff that makes them feel better. Whether that's vegetables or whatever it is.
Yeah. And with local being a real big part of the story.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking about focusing, it had to be. And like clearly running food and bev in Sausalito, local is very important to customers. And you have to clearly sell your beer as local beer, right?
Yeah. And then timing kicks in.
Yeah.
And our timing just happened to be really good, where right when this was starting, it was interesting seeing that kind of transition during COVID and I went through it too, where you kind of reach the outer limits of like, wow, okay, that's a lot of wine, or that's a lot of scotch or something. And I think a lot of people had that. And they also had just like a wake up with mortality, right? This is what happens during a pandemic. And then, all those forces that we were talking about that contribute to the tailwind really started flaring up, and that wind started getting strong. And I got really lucky with, Mary at Whole Foods and Rusty at H-E-B in Texas. These people just were looking for my product, and I just happened to be there at the right time. And things started happening quickly. And, so it went from the small independent retailers in San Francisco, who we still love them. They're still a big, big portion of our business. But pretty quickly, for the reasons that we were talking about with Athletic as well, people were looking for that number 2.
Yeah.
And people wanted something else. And we were there at the right time. And, it's been one hell of a ride over the last few years.
Oh my gosh. What's it like walking in, traveling to Texas, walking into H-E-B or Whole Foods and bringing in, your cooler and doing the pitch? Like, what's your pitch to them at that moment?
Our pitch is brand and taste. I mean, it doesn't matter what you're selling in the world of consumer. It's those two things that are going to win someone over, right? And going in with enthusiasm and authenticity, and we were just really, really confident that if we could get in a room with someone and have them experience the brand through the packaging, through my story, through everything like that, and then taste the beer, we had them.
Yeah.
And they realize what's going on, right? They realize that, oh my gosh, like this is something different, right? I gotta get away from those O'Douls, those Clausthalers, because those are the things of the past. This is the thing of the future.
And you pitched them on the Kolsch? Was that the SKU that you were going out with?
Yeah, that's our lead dog.
I mean, your lead dog is the smartest lead dog in the game, because I think everyone knows Kolsch. Like, and I said at the jump, like between a beer garden in America or traveling Europe, it's like the most iconic flavor profile. And you know it when you know it. Pilsners and hazies have, a wide spectrum, but
Yeah.
Kolsch is pretty tight.
Yeah. And it's also different. It was just really clear that we're doing something different here, and we care about, what's in the can.
What about the pink? Now, I think that's a big part of it, or the peach, I guess I could say. How long did it take you to land on that? Because I think that is a cool color, to lead with. And it says it's a little different than Athletic.
Yeah.
They don't have many pinks, and really, there's something about that can that just jumps out.
Yeah, well, I told you about our standard for the brand coming to life, and really it is summarized as, it's a brand so beautiful you want to put it on your wall. And the other interesting contributing factor and kind of landing on not just this, but the overall aesthetic is that if you look at the gender dynamics in this NA craft movement, it is virtually 50-50.
Wow. And
that is so far from what craft beer was. And that's really powerful, right? It's powerful for what does this look like in grocery? It's powerful for how do people drink this at restaurants? And it is, so we wanted to create something that was welcoming, right? That wasn't your craft beer of the past, which was, 95% male. We wanted something that said, this is a beautiful brand, right? And whether you're a male consumer, female consumer, whatever you are, this should appeal to you, both in brand and in taste.
Were you looking at Pantones? I mean, how did you get to that pink?
Because now you're asking me to go down memory lane.
I'm going down memory. This is what we do here.
Yeah, I don't know. It took a long time. I remember the four walls of my office being absolutely covered in Pantones and different designs from ceiling to floor, and walking around time and time again, myself, my wife, my friends, and landing here. And I feel great about where we landed. I mean, it's really fun. And it's just so rewarding being out, and when people see the brand, they really appreciate it,
Yeah, no, it's well said. So you took on $22 million in investment funding this year, and it's a significant raise for the NA category. Tate, let me hear a bit about what you're going to do with this money and your goals with expansion.
Yeah, well, I'd say three things to summarize it. We have an absolutely incredible team that we've built. People really see the opportunity here to be a part of something special, and a brand that's really out at the frontier of, I think, what is going to be one of the most important consumer trends of our generation and subsequent generations to come. And so we're looking to expand that team pretty rapidly as we get into push into new parts of the country. Grow brand awareness. All of our marketing has been on the street, handing out cans and hands. We do that at 5Ks. We do it at concerts. We do it at yoga studios. We do it at beach cleanups. I mean, if there's anywhere where a beer might fit, we're there.
You see it in boxes too, shipped around the country. I've seen your product in boxes.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing about being NA. We can move product really quickly, and once we get that product in someone's hand and they experience, the packaging that you're talking about, and then they crack it open and they experience the product, we got them. I mean, they love they love it. So for us, being a small brand looking at a giant mountain to climb, we got to grow brand awareness. So a significant portion is is about getting more people into the tent.
Yeah.
And thirdly, we're going to continue to invest in technology, and we are here to make the best non-alcoholic beer that the world has ever seen. And anything less than that, we're not doing our jobs. So it means continuing to push the envelope on what's possible.
Speaking of funding, have the strategics been kind of hovering around you? I know I talked to a lot of founders on the show in many food categories and drink categories, and strategics are always part of the conversation. What's your relationship with them?
Well, we've got a lot of work to do, and we're very focused on growing this brand as we know we can. I think that the strategics are all trying to figure out, they're taking a 5 and 10 year look into the future and saying, oh my God, my customers are drinking less alcohol. I got to figure out a plan here. And so, while they do that, we're going to be focused on doing what we do best, and that's growing this brand and bringing people, like I said, into the best day 10.
So your phone rings a bit.
I don't know about that, but I think it's a really interesting time in the category, and we've got a lot of work to do. We'll see where it goes.
So what, Tate, is the R&D pipeline looking like? Because looking at your list, you have 4 SKUs now. There's not a sour. I'm not seeing really a European lager. I have one I'd like to request at the end, but what do you
hear it?
What are you thinking about in terms of growing the actual offerings?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've been so focused on just trying to maintain stock in our 4 core. That has been really difficult. But as we kind of round the corner on getting ahead of the inventory problem, we have been doing some experimentation. So our beer that's coming out is called the Galaxy Ripple, and that is a Imperial IPA. So lots of hop characteristics in that one, and that's going to be for all the IPA drinkers. That's going to be, I think, an eye-opening experience. We will have. So we did a really fun collaboration with the Conservation Alliance, which was a Pilsner. It was called Nature's Pills,
cool.
And that we had a lot of fun bringing that to market. So the Pilsner, and it was just, I'll get you some of that.
Yeah.
It was a fantastic beer. So that one's coming back. We will have Belgian White.
Oh, cool! You will have
so that's
European
coriander, chamomile, orange peel. It is really killer beer, and we're just we're not going too wide. I mean, we're going to stay focused. We're going to use our rotational beers as a way to continue to experiment and really push the envelope on what's possible.
Where are your breweries now? I mean, are you only on the West Coast right now?
No, we're contract brewed.
Yeah.
So we've got a couple locations around the country, and again, as we expand our footprint, we're trying to stay as close to the consumer as possible. Yeah, we've got a really unique relationship where we have our own brewing team internally. That brewing team works a lot with our own technology, and then we find partners that have that capacity we need, that have the quality standards we need, and it's allowed us to move quickly, right, in a way where if you start building out breweries, that makes the amount of money that we've raised look like
the capital.
pennies.
22 doesn't get you much.
Yeah, no way.
Breweries. Yeah, no, and contract is what I assumed, and you have to be a little bit I would say clandestine about because of contracts, but clearly you have distribution in over 20 states, right?
Yeah, we're pushing 36 states now coming out of this year. So we're busy.
Well, my request, and I've not seen this because, as I mentioned, I've had the Asahi 00 and I've had a Sapporo 00. But to my knowledge, and please write in, listeners, if you have any suggestions, but I haven't seen a Japanese
Oh, I love that.
NA.
So funny. We were just having a product meeting and we were talking about that.
A first mover is gonna totally rock it if you can do
Yeah.
and nail Sapporo, because frankly the distribution is lacking in America, and I know Japan has an NA culture, and I know tastes are changing this massive brewing culture there.
Yep.
But no one has done their version of a Japanese brew.
Good challenge.
Let's see it. I'd love to see it. So we have a lot of industry folks listening to the show, folks who work in restaurants, who maybe even manage bars or manage beverage programs. And to me, it still seems like there is a lack of understanding, particularly when you go to like the middle to the fine side of the coin, that there is a real market of NA beer drinkers out there. And it shocks me when you walk into a place that has 30 beers but only has Athletic.
Yeah.
And I just have to say there has to be an opportunity to make some money there, because frankly, we don't all want to drink a wine flight or drink full speed beer, particularly if we're going and having a large meal. We have to drive there. So what's up with that? Like, and industry folks, like, what's up with that?
It's such a good question. And I think that, if you kind of zoom out and I think about telling people this idea when it was just getting going, right? After I opened that fridge and saw the O'Douls, people looked at me like I had 8 heads. And there's no question that we have come a long way since then. But to your point, I think there's plenty of more room for growth. And so, I don't know. I mean, part of it is there are always going to be haters, and I welcome that. In some respects, it feels good. It's motivating to prove people wrong. But man, even in the last 2 years, we've worked with a major airline. Alaska Airlines came to us and said, we're recognizing our consumers are moving.
They're so great with food and bev. Alaska.
Yeah, it's so great.
Top of the line.
We just rolled out with Major Food Group. So, that kind of stuff is happening. We've got cruise ships, we've got music venues, we've got arenas, and a lot of these things are like, it's like moving a tanker, right? It doesn't happen overnight, and they want to make the right decision. And, because of the 3-tier system, there's you have to have the right distributor that services the right account. And so you gotta push through some walls in order to make it happen.
Right.
But it feels like these things are coalescing at more or less a perfect time, right? Where whether you're a high-end restaurant or a bar, you also want to have some choice too. You don't want to just choose, Athletic because everyone else is choosing it too, right? You want to have some choice, and you want to make the right choice. So I think that you're going to see there's kind of been this inertia that we've had to overcome, and you're going to see things pick up. And I liken it to the snowball rolling downhill, and I think that's going to lead to a lot of exciting new placements, and hopefully those haters in the media might realize that they missed it on this one. And I think that they also take a critical lens, rightly so, because there have been so many instances of other trends that, people have said for one reason or another are going to be the next thing, right? And it's going to be an enduring trend, and they've turned out to be flashes in the pan.
Mm-hmm.
I am really encouraged by how much growth has happened in our category that is not celebrity driven, right? That is not some major celebrity with the billboard, and they have a major marketing budget, and this thing goes from 0 to 100 and then crashes down to 0 again.
Yeah,
all that growth that you've seen in our category, especially on the craft side, has really come organically, right? And that's because people are feeling good. It's word of mouth, and I think when you combine those things together, and you hit the milestones that we've hit, it makes a really credible case for that enduring trend that's going to last. And I think that ultimately culminates with that completely tectonic shift in consumer behavior that we talked about.
I mean, to get to 40 billion by 2033, you're going to have to open up to some brand new channels.
Yeah.
And you could see a reality where one of the big QSRs jumps on this train. It has to happen. And I'll be very curious to see who that is, if it's, a Sweet Green, or is it is it a McDonald's? I mean, in Europe, there's beer at McDonald's everywhere, and it works well together.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw, there's a stat that 60% of the consumption of non-alcoholic beer is incremental.
Yeah.
And
interesting.
And so it is happening it's all about different occasions. It's all about those moments where, you want to drink a beer, but you don't, for whatever reason. It's lunch, right? Or it's, Tuesday night, or it's Saturday afternoon, day drinking. And the non-alcoholic beer can really fill a void that we just got to be there. And then people realize, like, oh my gosh, it's an unlock. Like, I can go do that.
It really is.
And that's the way I think that, the smart restaurants, the smart airlines, the smart fill in the blank are realizing that for them, it's good business, right? The hotel groups, it's good business.
Yeah. You mentioned Major Domo. Sorry. You mentioned Major Food Group, and you mentioned Alaska Air. These are the tip of the spear when it comes to food and bev innovation in our country. It's obvious.
Yeah.
So there's got to be a QSR who's
right.
Where's the tip of the
Why
spear?
shouldn't you have a great tasting non-alcoholic Mexican lager at Chipotle for your lunch?
Yeah,
you should.
Yeah,
it's going to take some time.
What about the craft NA beer bar? Now, in New York, with real estate as it is, it's probably challenging, but I could see like a Denver or a Phoenix or a place that maybe real estate isn't as crazy where this could actually work. Tate, is there such a thing in our country that maybe I'm missing?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we see them popping up all over the place, whether it's a bar or a NA bottle shop.
Yeah.
And those are just great. It's amazing to see that happen. And there's so much product discovery that happens. There's so much word of mouth that creates. More power to them. We love supporting those accounts.
Oh, I would love to walk into an NA craft beer bar and do like a bunch of flights and just do some tasting. It would be a real joy to me to do that. So maybe New York will get one. I know there are bottle shops and some of the biggies have, come and gone, but like thinking NA beer. I mean, there is a stigma though of going to a bar and not drinking alcohol. I mean, that's the hurdle, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing though. I think once you whether you're at a bar or a wedding or, any sort of function where beer was there, once you get an NA beer in your hand and you get that taste, that stigma goes away. I mean, you are no longer thinking you're part of something else. You're part of the mix. And that's the experience that I think is a major unlock for consumers.
Yeah. Well, I'm a fan. This is 100% unpaid. This is not a partnership. This is like my true love of your brand, and I
really appreciate that.
I love
Thank
it.
you.
Tate Huffard, thank you so much for joining This Is Taste.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Rob Jensen, welcome to This Is Taste. How are you doing today?
Thanks. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. Stoked to be on.
Yeah, me too. I love that I was introduced to Visitor Beer recently, and for me, when I hear about a new beer that is in the NA category and it's thrust into my hands, I'm not turning it down. And and it's just cool to see somebody like yourself who's worked at Pitchfork and at agencies, and somebody who has been at the tip of the spear of culture. I'm just going to say, I don't know you personally, but you knew some culture. You're down. You are venturing into this category, so it's exciting to talk to you.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm excited to be having the conversation, and you said it, not me. In terms of connected to culture, I feel like in my professional life, I've always been what I felt was adjacent to culture. But yeah, I don't know. Obviously, like there's a lot happening in the NA beer space, and it's an exciting time to be involved and part of the conversation.
Yeah, so Rob, tell me what drew you to the NA beer category? I mean, do you have a personal connection to beer brewing? And also, were you looking at, a market? Was there a business choice that non-alcoholic beers, have a growth potential, perhaps?
Yeah, spoiler alert, I am not a brewmaster.
I didn't assume so.
Yeah, I live in Chicago. There's a rich drinking tradition and brewing tradition here in the Midwest. My co-founder David is from Milwaukee, so between Chicago and Milwaukee, uh, rich beer tradition. But for me, and I think David, like some of the personal connection for us probably comes from like, we've only been around for about 3 years, but the personal connection I think is rooted in a lot of ways in like our own selfish desire to be at a show or at a restaurant and, wanting to drink an NA beer without having to ask the bartender to pour it in a glass because we don't like the way the can looks, or like, there's the idea that like the can and what you're drinking and holding in your hand can mean something. And I think just like prior to starting Visitor, we weren't really seeing anything that like we selfishly wanted to hold in our own hands and drink in these settings. So we just felt like, okay, it doesn't seem like anyone is thinking about it in this way, and maybe perhaps we're uniquely suited to bring something to the market.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's definitely so much thought that goes into packaging for alcohol, for beverage, and I look at your can and it's like minimal. I mean, there's like aluminum, and then the naming convention is really cool. And I want you to tell me a little bit about how you decided on that. You've got lager and you've got extra IPA. You don't have like tasting notes. You're not trying to do specific styles from countries. What was the reasoning here?
Yeah, it's the whole brand is certainly minimal by design. I think a lot of that stems from our opinion that brands in general, this isn't just like beverage brands, but just like brands in general, are doing a lot. And in many cases, doing too much. They're yelling at their customers. They're like, I feel like there's not a lot of subtlety that you see out there in terms of how brands are like interacting with the customers. And I think that really informed like mine and David's approach to the brand of just like, as you mentioned, the packaging, the can is almost all bare aluminum. Our eco-friendly 6-pack carriers are pretty low profile. And I think we just wanted to come at this NA beer space from a different direction in a world where like, you walk into a craft beer aisle, like at a grocery store still today, there's just like beer design there's crazy dragons and illustrations and just like, there's a lot happening. So we kind of just wanted to do the polar opposite of what we were seeing, and kind of zig when everyone else was zagging.
Yeah, absolutely good. Well said. And I think you're right. There's a lot of pastels out there. Pastels seem to be the jam these days. Take me back to your time working, at Pitchfork, where you were running, marketing initiatives, and you worked at Shuba's, which I love Shuba's. Been there a number of times.
Yeah.
And you were at the venue, and lots of alcohol is always around. And like I've been to Pitchfork Fest, R.I.P. the Chicago one at least.
R.I.P.
Man,
Yep.
gonna miss that one. So like you're looking at all these young people who have culture at the center of their world. They're they're drinking a lot of alcohol. Are you thinking about non-alcoholic beer in these spaces? Are you thinking that there's an opportunity?
I mean, absolutely. I think like my time in like the Chicago music venue world and my time at Pitchfork was all pretty informative in that way. But I don't talk about it much, but I'm a musician as well and was playing and touring in bands for a long time prior to working on that side of the music business. And I think like for me, the seeds were like planted way back that, during that time in my life where I was just like on the road a lot. And, I'm thinking back to like I was playing drums for Daniel Johnston on tour in 2010, and at that time that was like one of the cushier tours that I had ever been on. And at that point, like, you're playing bigger rooms. Some venues have a bigger hospitality budget to take care of the bands, and you're rolling up to a new venue every day, and there's just like multiple cases of beer and booze waiting like at every venue every day for you. And I think that still is the case for a lot of people on the road. And for me, I think that was the first time where it was like, oh, like, and I never really had a problem I never really struggled with addiction to alcohol or drugs or anything like that. But like, I was drinking every day because it was there and it was available to me. Like, and it was fun. And I think that like being on the road and playing music, it's a hard enough lifestyle in its own right. And when you add that element into it of just like, suddenly this is just available to you pretty much every day. I have a pretty, I have a suspicion that had there been some good non-alcoholic beverage options and beer options available to me back then, I probably would have been reaching for them.
So well said. I mean, I think of going to attending concerts as being a time when you're crushing so many beers and not having that option to take a round off, even not like take it all out of your life. Now that you go to shows and you've got a lot of different NA options, and I think all drinkers are just loving this idea that they can have a beer and have that palate refresh with a bitter, bitter profile, and not get wasted or have the effects of alcohol hit them. And I love that. I love what you're saying. What shows come to mind when you're at Shuba's? Any like big favorites that are just at the tip of your tongue?
Oh, I mean, it was a while ago that I was working there, but I think some standouts. Like I remember seeing the Walkmen play at Shuba's like pretty early in their career.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty big standout one to me. And I was also working at the time, it was a newer club. It was like a sister club to Shuba's called Lincoln Hall. And I got to be there I was running marketing for both venues at the time. It was, I feel like a lot of people, I'm from the Chicagoland area and I've been here my whole life, but like some people sleep on the fact that like Chicago has a sneaky amount of like small to mids like cap venues. And I think it's such a cool thing about Chicago. That's a long answer, but yeah, I think it's also, you think about like these venues, it's just like the way that they actually are profitable is it's based on bar sales. Like it's not just ticket sales. And so I think like during this shift and like people are just drinking less across the board, I think it was like there was almost a delayed reaction in my mind of like venues were in denial for a while that like their bar sales were down, but I think like slowly they've started to come around to the fact that like, hey, having NA beverage options it's like going to allow you to maybe make up some of what you lost, and it's not like taking away from your bar sales, it's additive.
Yeah, it's such a bummer when all you have is like the Coke gun, when you're at a show. Like, yeah, I always like it blows my mind too at restaurants too. It's like, you've got people there who don't want, that super sweet mocktail, but like want to participate. It's like get a craft NA, like visitor, just like what how do you think about restaurants? Because I gotta believe, we talked a lot about clubs, but getting into restaurants, breaking those accounts. And we had Tate from Best Day on this episode before you. And
oh, nice.
Tate's got a great story as well. And like, we talked a little bit about getting into restaurants. What's it like for visitor right now? You're only 3 years into your journey, so you're at a different, phase. You're really on the upswing. What's it like getting into the restaurants?
I think right now we're being really targeted about like we're not trying to be in all the restaurants in the markets that we're in. We're trying to be in the right ones.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, like selfishly, like those are the places that like me and David want to be going to. So it's like I think like, we look at like what are the places of influence, like music venues, art galleries, restaurants, like places where just like culture happens. And it's just like we want to be a part of that conversation because, there's no better way to make an impression than like being tied to like, oh, my friends and I just went to this amazing restaurant and we got this really great NA beer. Like that association is so valuable, and there's no better way to make like a first impression for people. So it's definitely part of our strategy.
Smart strategy. I feel like Al's Ale up here in New York has done something like that in on the East Coast. Getting in the right spots, and Visitor in the Midwest. Are you in New York City restaurants? And also, just we should have said this at the top, but like, how do you buy your beers?
Yeah, so distribution wise, right now we have proper distribution in Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, New York City Metro, Nashville, small footprint in LA, and small footprint in SF. If you check out visitor.fyi, we've got a little store locator where you can find places to buy Visitor. We also sell beer on our website, and we sell on Amazon as of recently too. So
cool.
Lots of places to get us, but yeah, we're definitely trying to be in not every spot right now, but just the right ones.
Yeah, really smart. It's terrific beer. I test. It's great stuff, and you got to try it. No, you're welcome. I like it a lot, and that's why you're on the show. It's there's a lot of new brands out there and more coming, and it's nice to hear an organic story. Tell me about the brewing process. What can you say?
I think the most important thing to convey is that like when we started coming up with this idea and wanted to make an NA beer, again, like coming back to the Midwest brewing tradition, like we didn't want to make a health beer. We didn't want to like inject it with ashwagandha and nootropics. Like, we didn't want to make like a functional health beer. We were just like dead set on like, this has to taste as close to like normal beer as we possibly can make it. And what that means is that like Visitor is brewed just like a normal beer is, with a few small modifications. But like a lot of people like maybe assume that there's like, oh, well, like you're going in and like you're sucking all the alcohol out, or like the process must be so much different. But like it really is brewed almost the exact same way that you would brew like a full octane beer. There's other ways to do it, but I guess like we were just like hell bent on making sure that this tastes just like a normal beer.
Yeah, it seems like when you dealkalize, takes away a lot of flavor, and that might be not the best way to go. Yeah,
mouthfeel.
Body is a great word. I think it does crush the body, and that dealkalized wines are mostly just horrific. And there's a few from Germany that are amazing, but it's hard to get that body back. But like with beer, thankfully, there's way more, and there's the brands I mentioned. It's cool. Like, is this process? Was it tough to land on it? I mean, it's a lot to actually create an NA beer that has that structure.
Yeah, I think it's like, as I mentioned, like I'm not a brewmaster, but like I enjoy beer. I still drink, and I have opinions about beer, and so does David. And I think for us, like it really came down to like we had a hunch that a lot of people that would be interested in buying and drinking Visitor like also still drank alcohol to some extent, and that definitely has been true so far since we launched. And like we even have like there's a place in Chicago they're calling it a boiler faker special, where it's like you can get a shot of whiskey with a Visitor. And to us, like I think that like seeing people doing that, it really crystallized like, okay, like these are the types of people that like we want to appeal to. Like oftentimes it's people that still are drinking, or they're just like, maybe they're alternating back and forth between a full octane beer and a Visitor, or drinking in, a mezcal cocktail and then a Visitor. So like this idea of balance seekers and like what these people are looking for in a beer, we had a hunch that like, let's just not overcomplicate this, and let's just make an NA beer that tastes like as much as a 1-for-1 swap for real beer as we possibly can.
The Boiler Faker is just on my mind right now. it's it's such a strong
It's so
articulation.
great. Yeah,
It's just a great articulation of how NA can work in all of a drinking culture. It's I love it. It's
100%.
yeah.
I guess this is getting back to like maybe the minimalist approach in general that we have, but like, there's some NA beverage brands out there that can be preachy sometimes, or like, like preach uh that you shouldn't be drinking alcohol. Like, I think brands have no place in like asserting themselves into the conversation, because everyone's relationship to beer, wine, spirits, alcohol it's different and it's deeply personal. For us, I think it's just like, I think there's a lot of power in saying less and let the people that are buying your beer define like what it means to them and how it fits in their life. And I think to a lot of brands that feels very scary to sort of like give up that control and that power to your customers. But I actually think that like the payoff is in that like you can create a much deeper connection by letting them define that than telling them like, this is how you should drink Visitor and this is where it should fit in your life and there should be no alcohol. Like, that's just, I think it's a heavy-handed and a wrong approach. So we're trying to kind of do the opposite there.
I mean, it's kind of the liquid death model in many ways. It's like just put it out there and just have like this product available that has a great brand and a great name, but doesn't like say anything specific, right?
Yeah, I think they're a good example of like letting the customer sort of like create those definitions and say where it fits in. It's just like there's a lot of power in that, and that's definitely our approach.
Yeah, and you have to have a great branding moment, with the aesthetics of the can, and because if you aren't
Totally.
saying anything preachy, they're like, what are we doing here? Because you're just like
Yep.
literally just a product with no story. So you're like,
Yeah, there is a risk there.
Yeah.
But we feel like we rolled the dice and we're playing it the right way.
no, it's cool. So you have two products now. The Extra IPA was just launched. Do you have a
Yep.
pipeline for other products? Or are you keeping it like one or two SKUs for now?
I'm sure this won't come as a huge shocker, but again, back to the minimalist thing, like we created Visitor with the intention of just like, with how craft beer traditionally has run, you're putting out a new style every couple months. There's
Yep.
seasonal things. Some people are kind of throwing shit against the wall, seeing what sticks, seeing what people like. I think we just wanted to have a really small core offering of beers that were all excellent and just like focus on quality in that and not like, use customers as like a testing ground necessarily. So I think it was just like, you know, we only launched our Extra IPA last fall. So for the first 2 years of this brand's existence, we were just rocking with Visitor Original Lager, and that was it. We were one SKU, and it's a long way of saying like we want to put out more beers, but we're very focused and intentional on like less can be more, and just like less beers, but like all of them high quality is what we're ultimately going for.
Yeah, I think some of the folks we talk about on the show and in the space are very limited with their offerings, and I think that's wise. I mean, I have to ask you about Athletic because, of course, like Athletic was like the big first mover in many ways, and really led the way, and I think you see Athletic now on a menu, and you're almost disappointed. You're like, oh. You got Athletic. I mean, I'll drink it. I like Athletic. It's great. I mean, great product, but like, it's like not. It doesn't signify anything. My editorial here, not yours. What do you think about that brand, though?
I think it's Athletic is really important in that I think they make good beers, and they're funded in a way that is opening doors for everyone else to walk in behind them in this category. So like they're doing a lot of hard work for everyone else, which we definitely appreciate. But I think it's almost like I think we're in NA beer 3.0 now, and so if you look at like okay, 1.0 was your Sharps, your O'Douls, like the stuff that like tasted horrible and also like came with the stigmas of like, oh, you probably have a problem with drinking if you're seen drinking one of these at a bar. And then there was like 2.0, which I think Athletic was the leader of, and I think maybe Best Day falls into as well.
Yeah.
Where you have like the beers are suddenly good, and but there's maybe like from a branding standpoint, it's inoffensive, it's mass market. It's not really necessarily like planting flags in any sort of specific cultural references. And that to me is like NA 2.0. But I think now we're in 3.0 where it's just like the expectation is that for a lot of people is that like, okay, the beer has to be good and the brand has to fit my lifestyle. And there needs to be some kind of emotional resonance with like why I'm drinking what I'm drinking. And I think that's what we really focus on at Visitor is just like, how do we build like an emotional connection with these customers? And a lot of the way is just like, let them define the part that it plays in their life. So I know that's a long answer, but
no, it's a great answer. And I love breaking it down into versions or waves. You're a man of music. So we're talking about like, emo, first wave, second wave, third wave vibes here. And I think it's really smart to think about it in eras. And I think the 3.0 era is extremely exciting. And it's exciting to see folks who aren't in the like craft beer world doing their version. Like, when Bell's does an NA, I'm sure it'll be a big story.
Yeah.
But like, that's cool. But I like the startups too, the new guys like yourself. It's very cool. Yeah,
it definitely feels like there's a new brand popping up every couple of months, it feels like.
Yeah.
And it's just like, the macro, the craft brewers, like they're all going to come out with their line extensions.
Yep.
Many of them will be good and they'll probably sell a lot of them. But I think there's an opportunity for people that haven't necessarily like been endemic in like the capital beer space that have other perspectives and aren't necessarily going by like the beer playbook. And anytime you have such a, this, I think hindsight will be 2020. Like we're still in this huge consumer shift in how people are drinking and how much and when and the occasions. But anytime you have such a big shift like this, like that is the opportunity for innovation to try something different and just to like throw old playbooks away, which is like, that's the fun part of this for us.
You said it really well. It's why we love covering NA beer on the show. It's a really such a cool movement right now in food in the capital F food media world is this NA beer moment. And yes, the line extensions will happen and they will be pretty good. But I like the innovation happening from the outside of the world. I have to close and ask you. You're a music guy. What are you listening to right now? What's good? Can be old, can be new. I don't need to put any. You don't need to, tell me your Spotify recap. But what are you playing?
I'm not going to the Spotify recap, but let's see. What have I been listening to lately? I'm just going to go down the list.
Like it.
There's a band from Asheville, North Carolina called Fust. They just put out a new record that have been loving. There's a guy named Phil Cook who just put out a solo instrumental piano EP that I have been loving. I've been listening a lot to the Laws Only record. The new Hamilton Lighthouser album is really good. The new Panda Bear record is really good. And then 2 records from last year that are still in heavy rotation for me are the Nap Eyes album and the MJ Lenderman record.
Yeah.
Been loving those.
Great picks, Rob. I appreciate you opening up your Spotify or your Apple Music, whatever it may be. Yeah, great stuff there. It's nice to talk a little bit about music. And thanks for joining. Visitor Beer is the brand. I'm a big fan, and I'm really gonna be seeking it out in New York. Where can I get it in New York City? Let's give it a plug right now.
My favorite spots to get it are there's a spot called Turk's Inn in Bushwick. That's almost like a Wisconsin supper club inspired spot. They carry us, and then down the street it's owned by the same people. There's a wild roller rink called Xanadu
Yeah.
that is kind of new. You can find us there. So those are my favorite spots to go in New York.
You are absolutely putting your beers in some cool spaces in New York.
And public records too.
Yeah.
Love public records.
Yeah, it seems like the strategy is like you're putting them in like places that are like clubs and have like a lot of activity, not just like restaurants.
Yeah, it's a selfish move. Those are the places we want to hang out. But it's been fun to see people picking it up.
Cool. Well, Rob Jensen, thank you so much for joining This Is Taste.
Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
This Is Taste is hosted and produced by Eliza Barbanal and me, Matt Rodbard. The show is edited by lead producer Clayton Gumbert and supervised by Pat Stango, Director of Media Production and Development at Penguin Random House. Thanks to Shalia Harris and the production team at Penguin Random House. Theme music by Steve Rydell. Logo and guest illustrations by Ellie Skurzat. Visit Taste online at tastecooking.com and make sure to subscribe to our newsletter to keep updated on all cool things in the world of taste.